true wealth and happiness are not found in gold, in silver, or in the fleeting treasures of fortune, but in the discipline of the soul that governs its desires and stands unmoved in the face of abundance or loss. And from this truth arises the timeless Stoic guide to living well. Imagine yourself standing in the crowded heart of ancient Rome, the marble streets glistening under the midday sun, the air filled with the cries of merchants, the clinking of coins, and the restless hum of ambition, where senators parade in purple robes and generals return with spoils of conquest, each one appearing powerful and free. Yet beneath the grandeur, their minds are chained to desire, their peace enslaved to possessions that fate can strip away in an instant. And it is here that the voice of Stoicism rises above the noise to declare that happiness is not for sale. Freedom cannot be purchased, and true wealth is measured not in what a man owns, but in what he masters within himself. The Stoics saw with piercing clarity that life unfolds under forces beyond our control, that fortune gives and fortune takes away, that the applause of the crowd fades as quickly as it swells, and that even the mightiest empire falls like dust when time commands it. And so they taught that the only fortress which endures is the character of the soul. The only treasure immune to loss is virtue, and the only wealth worth pursuing is the serenity that springs from discipline, courage, and wisdom. Consider Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, surrounded by legions and luxury, yet writing to himself in the dim glow of a solitary lamp that gold and power are smoke and ashes compared to the calm of a mind governed by reason, urging himself to live each day as though fortune could vanish with the dawn, and reminding his weary heart that dignity rests not on thrones, but on choices. Picture Seneca in his villa, among marble columns and gardens perfumed with flowers, writing letters that warned of the corruption of luxury, confessing that though fortune had filled his coffers, he carried it lightly, as a traveler carries a cloak, useful when cold, but never confused with life itself. For he knew that dependence on comfort is the heaviest chain of all. Imagine Epictetus, once a slave, owning nothing but the clothes upon his back, standing before eager students with unwavering eyes and proclaiming that freedom is not granted by possessions, nor stolen by poverty, but discovered in the mastery of thought, for no master could command his will, no emperor could enslave his judgment, and no misfortune could touch the sovereignty of his inner life. These men, so different in rank and circumstance, spoke with one voice that still resounds today, telling us that wealth without wisdom is poverty in disguise, that happiness built on indulgence is fragile and fleeting, and that the man who rules his desires is richer than kings. Yet their teachings are not relics of marble ruins, but living truths for our own restless age, where towers of glass rise instead of temples, where screens glow with promises of joy in every purchase, and where men and women labor long hours, chasing luxuries that dissolve into dissatisfaction, never realizing that in the endless pursuit of more, they forge invisible chains heavier than iron. The Stoic guide to wealth and happiness begins not with rejection of the world, but with mastery of the self, not by fleeing possessions, but by refusing to be possessed by them. For money can buy bread, but not contentment, shelter, but not peace, comfort, but not freedom. The secret lies in learning the art of sufficiency, to know when enough is enough, to recognize that the man who desires little walks in abundance, while the man who desires everything lives in endless poverty even in palaces. To understand this is to picture yourself in front of a mirror, holding not a purse of coins but the weight of your choices, seeing that each act of restraint over indulgence, each decision of patience over haste, each moment of generosity over greed is another stone laid in the treasury of true wealth, a treasure untouched by thieves and uncorrupted by time. The Stoics invite us to see life as a grand marketplace, where fortune tempts us with glittering goods, yet the wise walk through unshaken, using what is useful, discarding what enslaves, knowing that liberty is not found in indulgence, but in independence. Imagine the chains that bind so many today, chains of debt that choke freedom, chains of envy that poison joy, chains of comparison that whisper you are never enough, and see how they mirror the same traps that ensnared men of Rome 2,000 years ago. The Stoics broke such chains by practicing voluntary discomfort, by fasting to remind themselves they could endure hunger, by sleeping on hard ground to remember they could endure hardship, by wearing simple clothes to prove they could live without luxury, all to train the mind to stand unshaken whether fortune offered plenty or scarcity, because the man who has rehearsed loss is free from fear, and the man who has mastered desire is free from slavery. In this practice lies the power to transform money from master into servant, from idol into tool, from chain into instrument of justice and generosity. Wealth itself, the Stoics taught, is indifferent, neither good nor evil in itself. Only the use we make of it determines its value, and so the man who buys virtue with his resources is rich beyond measure, while the man who buys vice is bankrupt, even if his coffers overflow. To see this truth, imagine two men standing side by side, one with palaces, servants, and endless banquets, yet trembling at every rumor of financial loss, restless with envy of rivals, chained by fear of change, and another who owns little but walks calmly, grateful for what is at hand, unshaken by loss, untempted by envy, generous in spirit, and steady in adversity. And ask yourself, which man is truly free? The Stoics leave no doubt that it is the second, for the richest man is not he who has the most, but he who needs the least. In our own world of markets rising and falling, of headlines that spark fear and greed, of advertisements that shout that joy waits in the next acquisition, the Stoic voice cuts through the noise to remind us that joy is not purchased, but practiced, cultivated in the mind through discipline and wisdom, available to all regardless of fortune, palace, or hut. For it requires no coin, only the courage to govern desire. Marcus Aurelius, at the height of power, reminded himself again and again that death comes to all, stripping away titles and wealth, leaving only the quality of the soul. And if such a man at the pinnacle of human fortune recognized that wealth is fleeting, how much more should we who live, surrounded by distractions, learn to measure our worth by the same eternal standard? True wealth is the strength to walk through both abundance and scarcity without losing balance, to endure loss with calm, to use what we have with wisdom, to give when we can, and to resist when we must. Think of the chains of debt that weigh upon so many today, pulling down the spirit and feeding fear. And hear the Stoic response that freedom lies not in the absence of bills, but in the absence of fear, that liberty is found not in possessions, but in mastery of self. To live with less and yet feel no lack is a wealth greater than any treasury, while to live with abundance and yet feel constant hunger is a poverty deeper than beggary. Epictetus showed with his life that fortune can take all external goods, but cannot touch the disciplined mind, that true wealth is stored in the dominion of reason and the sovereignty of virtue. The Stoic Guide invites us to practice gratitude for what we have, to train ourselves to endure the absence of what we crave, to recognize that every time we master an impulse, we mint a coin of true wealth in the treasury of the soul, a currency immune to inflation, theft, or decay. Wealth without wisdom is a burden, but poverty with virtue is freedom. And the secret of Stoicism rests in this paradox that the world still resists, but the wise embrace. That happiness is not the fruit of possession, but of perception, not the abundance of goods, but the abundance of self-command. Picture Marcus Aurelius in his tent at the frontier, writing by candlelight that fame and fortune are smoke compared to the clarity of a disciplined mind. Or Seneca reminding himself that luxury is a trial harder than poverty, because poverty teaches moderation by necessity. But luxury tempts the soul into chains of fear and dependence. Or Epictetus declaring that the man who fears poverty is already poor, while the man who accepts loss with calm is already rich, and see in their voices a harmony across time that speaks as clearly to us as it did to their world. Their wisdom endures because it points us to a freedom that no thief can steal, no fortune can destroy, and no desire can corrupt. The freedom that arises when a man governs himself. And so, as you hear these words, let the question linger in your mind, not how much you own, but how much you need, not how full your coffers are, but how steady your heart remains when fortune shifts, and ask yourself whether your wealth is built upon shifting sand or rooted in the rock of virtue. Because in the end, true wealth is not what you carry in your hands, but what you carry in your soul. And true happiness is not granted by fortune, but cultivated by discipline. And it is this truth that the Stoics bequeath to us as their eternal guide to wealth and happiness.